Have you ever found yourself frozen in that painful in-between space, not exactly in a relationship, but not quite out of it either? Now, maybe you had something real, or at least it felt real. Deep talks, intimate moments, glimpses of emotional connection that made you think this could be something. And then without warning, they pulled away, stopped responding, went quiet. No explanation, no closure, just distance. And now you're left wondering, will they come back? That question loops in your mind, playing on repeat, keeping you stuck in hope and heartbreak at the same time. Hi, I'm Jim Roney, and if you've ever been in a relationship or situationship with someone who suddenly shuts down or disappears when things start to get close, you're not imagining things. You're likely dealing with an avoidantly attached partner. And today's video is going to help you understand the one sign that actually tells you if they're coming back, and more importantly, if it will mean anything when they do. Because here's something most people don't tell you. Avoidants don't always walk away because they stopped caring. In fact, they often pull back because they feel too much too fast, and they don't know how to sit with the vulnerability that comes with true intimacy. But here's where it gets tricky. Sometimes they do come back. They circle back in your life with a text, a just checking in, or a sudden reappearance. And you start to hope again. But not every return is a sign of growth. Some are just resets of the same emotional loop. If you don't know what to look for, you can get caught in a cycle that breaks you down slowly. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the emotional patterns of avoidant attachment, what their withdrawal really means, and how to recognize the difference between temporary re-engagement and real emotional change. I'll show you how to stop abandoning yourself while waiting for someone who hasn't learned to face their own fears. So if you've been holding your breath, hoping for answers, hit that subscribe button and stick around. You deserve more than mixed signals and false hope. You deserve clarity, peace, and love that chooses you, not just once but consistently. Let's get into it, because maybe the question isn't just if they'll come back. Maybe the real question is, who will you be when they do? One, avoidant disconnection isn't personal. Let's start with something that can be incredibly hard to believe. When you're on the receiving end of silence, avoidant disconnection isn't personal. I know that when someone you care about pulls away, especially with no explanation, it feels deeply personal. It feels like rejection, like you weren't enough, like you said the wrong thing, like something about you made them stop showing up. But here's what I need you to hear loud and clear. Their pulling away is not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their emotional bandwidth and the wounds they haven't faced. Avoidantly attached people often learned early in life that closeness is risky. Maybe they had parents who were emotionally inconsistent, present one day, cold the next. Or maybe they grew up in environments where being vulnerable was seen as weak or unsafe. Over time, they built a strategy: stay in control, don't depend on anyone, and protect yourself at all costs. So now, even in adulthood, when a relationship starts to feel emotionally intimate or real, it triggers a fear response. They retreat, not because you did something wrong, but because their nervous system is telling them this is dangerous, you're about to lose yourself. I worked with a woman whose partner would become incredibly loving and connected, right up until the moment she expressed that she was feeling closer. She'd say something like, "I'm really happy with where we're going," and within days he'd go silent. At first she spiraled into self-blame, but over time she started to see it clearly. He wasn't pulling away because of her. He was pulling away because emotional closeness activated old fears he didn't know how to handle. That's why it's so important not to internalize their disconnection. You can't logic your way into their emotional world, and you can't love them hard enough to heal their wounds for them. The moment you stop taking their silence as evidence of your worth is the moment you start reclaiming your power. Their retreat says everything about where they're at emotionally and nothing about whether or not you're lovable. You don't need to chase what's afraid of closeness. What you need is connection that doesn't disappear, the moment it feels real. That starts with seeing their patterns for what they are, theirs, not yours. 2. The one real sign they might come back. Let's talk about something that gets a lot of people stuck the moment the avoidant comes back. Maybe it's been days, weeks, or even months. You've done the hard work of pulling back, of trying to heal, maybe even convincing yourself to move on. And suddenly, there they are. A message, a phone call. Maybe they say they miss you. Maybe they're vague and just want to check in, and in that moment, your heart starts hoping again. But here's the truth you need to hear. The fact that they come back doesn't mean they've changed. What matters far more is how they come back. A true sign that an avoidant partner is returning in a meaningful way isn't found in the words they say, it's in their emotional accountability and the shifts in their behavior. If they come back saying all the right things but can't follow through, if the connection feels exactly like it did before, full of mixed signals and emotional dodging, then nothing has changed. That's not growth, that's a reset of the same painful cycle. And if you're not careful, you'll get pulled right back in, hoping this time will be different, only to find yourself hurt all over again. I had a client who went through this exact thing. Her avoidant ex reached out after 3 months of no contact. He said he'd been thinking about her, that he missed the connection, that she was different from anyone else. Naturally, she felt hopeful. But within 2 weeks, the same patterns started again, disappearing for days. Vague answers, no real discussion of what had gone wrong. He hadn't done the inner work. He just felt lonely and wanted the comfort of her presence again. And to her credit, she saw it. She recognized that his return lacked the one thing that matters most: emotional responsibility. So when the avoidant returns, ask yourself, are they showing up differently? Are they naming their part in the disconnection? Are they creating safety through consistency, or just looking for reassurance on their terms? If not, then they're not coming back for you. They're coming back for comfort, control, or familiarity. Your healing isn't measured by whether they come back. It's measured by your ability to see clearly and choose yourself even when your heart still wants to believe in their potential. That's the shift, and that's what sets you free. 3. Cycles of hope and emotional survival. Let's talk about something that keeps a lot of people emotionally stuck, even when their head knows better: the cycle of hope and emotional survival. If you've been in a connection with someone avoidant, you've probably felt it. You wait, you hope, you shrink parts of yourself, you walk on eggshells just to keep the peace. And then when they send a message or give you a tiny glimpse of attention, it feels like progress, like maybe they're changing, maybe they're finally seeing your worth. But often it's not real progress, it's just a temporary reconnection, just enough to reset the emotional loop. This cycle isn't just about the other person, it often runs much deeper. Many of us have old emotional wounds that confuse love with struggle. Maybe you grew up with a parent who was inconsistent, loving one day, distant the next. Or maybe you were taught directly or indirectly that you had to earn love by being easygoing, low maintenance, or self-sacrificing. So when someone gives you breadcrumbs, you don't see them as crumbs, you see them as proof that love is hard, but that you're finally doing it right. I remember talking to a client who had been going back and forth with her avoidant ex for over a year. He would pull away, she would panic. And when he eventually sent a vague, "Hey, how have you been?" text, she'd feel relief. She'd tell herself, see, he does care. But nothing ever really changed. The emotional intimacy never deepened. Her needs were never fully acknowledged. She was in a constant state of emotional survival, living for moments of connection and shrinking herself to avoid triggering disconnection. Here's the hard truth: you can't build a secure relationship inside a loop that keeps you emotionally starving. Hope is beautiful, but when it becomes a reason to stay stuck, it turns into self-abandonment. When you mistake breadcrumbs for a feast, you begin to convince yourself that you don't need more. You start settling for a relationship that exists mostly in your imagination, one that has potential, but no actual foundation. Breaking this cycle doesn't mean giving up on love. It means refusing to keep shrinking for it. It means recognizing that real love doesn't require you to constantly prove your worth or tolerate inconsistency. It means seeing that peace isn't something you get after the struggle. It's something you build into the relationship from the start. So ask yourself, am I growing in this connection or am I surviving it? The answer matters. Because when you start choosing your peace over your programming, the whole story changes. You stop waiting for someone to meet you halfway and start meeting yourself with the love and clarity you've always deserved. That's when the cycle breaks, and that's when healing truly begins. 4. Your healing isn't in their return, it's in your rise. One of the most powerful turning points in this journey, especially if you're stuck in the emotional fog of waiting for someone avoidant to come back, is realizing that your healing doesn't depend on their return. It's not about if they text you, apologize, or finally get it. As tempting as it is to pin your peace on the idea of their comeback, the truth is this: your healing lives in your rise, not in their return. The real question isn't, will they come back? It's, who am I becoming while I wait? That shift changes everything, because when you're caught in the loop of waiting, you're not just waiting on a person. You're waiting to feel worthy. You're waiting to feel chosen. You're waiting for someone else to reflect back to you that you matter. And while that longing is completely human, it puts your power in someone else's hands. Someone who may not even have the emotional tools to show up for themselves, let alone for you. I once worked with a client named Hannah, who had been stuck in a year-long limbo with an avoidant partner. Every few months, he'd come back full of charm and vague promises, only to retreat again whenever things got emotionally real. She spent so much energy analyzing his texts, trying to not be too much and hoping this time would be different. But the real transformation didn't happen when he finally showed up again. It happened when she started showing up for herself. She stopped waiting. She started journaling, seeing a therapist, building friendships, reclaiming her mornings with peace instead of anxiety. And one day she told me, "It's weird, I still think about him, but I no longer feel like I need him to come back to feel whole." That's the rise. That's where healing begins. When you stop abandoning yourself for someone who won't face their own patterns, you begin to rebuild your self-trust. You start making choices from a place of clarity, not desperation. You learn to hold space for your own emotions without handing them to someone else to manage. And in doing that, you stop living reactively and start living intentionally. That's when your nervous system starts to settle. That's when your worth becomes anchored, not floating. It's okay to love someone who couldn't love you back in the way you needed, but it's not your job to wait for them to become someone they're not ready to be. It's your job to become the person you've always needed: stable, grounded, loving, and emotionally honest. Not perfect, just present. So the next time you feel yourself spiraling into, will they come back? Shift the question. Ask, what do I need to come back to myself today? That's where your power is. That's where your healing lives. And that's the version of you no one can take away. 5. Breaking the cycle. Breaking the cycle with an avoidant partner doesn't happen by hoping harder, being more patient, or proving you're worth staying for. It happens when you stop negotiating with confusion and start choosing emotional clarity. It happens when you stop reaching for breadcrumbs, those inconsistent messages, story views, or casual check-ins, and start saying to yourself, I deserve a full meal. Because the truth is, you don't break this pattern by waiting for the avoidant to wake up. You break it by rising into your self-respect. And that starts with boundaries. Not the harsh, punishing kind that come from anger, but the calm, grounded kind that say, I love myself too much to keep shrinking in the name of love. A firm boundary might look like no longer responding to vague texts that lead nowhere. It might mean not accepting last-minute plans or emotionally vague conversations. It's not about playing games, it's about stepping out of their pattern and standing firmly in your own. I had a client who once told me, "It felt like I was always waiting for him to give me just enough to feel hopeful, but never enough to feel safe." That's the breadcrumb trap. And it's exhausting. The moment she started saying no to unclear messages, stopped engaging in endless emotional guesswork, and focused on building her own life again, she didn't just feel more empowered, she felt free. The anxiety began to fade, not because he changed, but because she did. You don't need to convince someone to show up for you. And you definitely don't need to sacrifice your emotional needs for temporary attention. That's not love, it's survival. The turning point comes when you realize, I'm not here to chase clarity, I'm here to create it. And that means listening to what people do, not just what they say. It means honoring what feels peaceful, not just what feels familiar. Breaking the cycle is less about them and more about you. Your power isn't in controlling the outcome, it's in choosing yourself over and over again until the cycle breaks. And when it does, you won't need to chase anyone, because you'll finally be walking toward the kind of love that doesn't require you to abandon yourself to keep it. As we close this chapter, I want to remind you of the truth that often gets buried beneath confusion, silence, and hope. You are not here to be an emotional placeholder for someone who's afraid of intimacy. You're not too intense, too emotional, or asking for too much. You're simply asking for consistency, connection, and emotional safety. And those are not unreasonable things. They are the foundation of healthy love. In this video, we've walked through the emotional maze that often comes with loving someone who has an avoidant attachment style. We've explored why their silence isn't personal, how to tell if their return actually means growth, and how easy it is to confuse breadcrumbs for love. We've looked at the emotional loops that keep you stuck, waiting, hoping, shrinking. And we've talked about how the real shift doesn't come from them showing up differently. It comes from you rising into a version of yourself that no longer waits to be chosen. Real healing starts when you stop asking, will they come back, and start asking, am I coming back to myself? The sign that truly matters isn't in their return. It's in your boundaries, your clarity, your refusal to abandon yourself again. You don't break the cycle by hoping they'll finally see your worth. You break it by finally seeing it yourself. So thank you for watching this video, for being open, and for doing the deep emotional work that most people run from. If this message spoke to something real inside you, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future content on attachment boundaries, healing, and emotionally mature love. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share your story, your thoughts, or what you're taking away from today's message. Your voice matters here. Final takeaway. Stop waiting for their return. Start building the version of you who never has to beg for love again. That version of you is powerful, grounded, and already on the way. Let this be the moment you stop surviving the emotional cycle and start creating the love you actually deserve. You've got this, and you're not alone.